Oh boy. I guess I'm having problems tonight here. It's just as well. Can you hear me? Because I couldn't get the audio working for the intro, which is not a big deal. So if you can hear me, say yes or no. Sound is on. Okay, that's good. Excellent. Okay, my big problem will be when I go to the internet. So maybe I ought to just test that very quickly before we start. All right. I'm just going to put something on that I will go with eventually. I'm not going to show this clip its way through, just so I want to see if you can hear it. All right, what I'm asking... help. We have got to finish the procedure. So if you could hear MSNBC right there, please tell me, because I can't really do what I need to do. You know, let me see here. All right, so I'm hoping, yes, I heard something in the background. But were you able to hear MSNBC? That's the key, because I have to be... Yep, all right, good, Ryan, thank you. Ryan, if you feel like coming on tonight, I'll send you a link. Like now, Nina's coming on. I want everybody to understand that she will be here in a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes. She's got a couple things she's got to attend to, and she will be back. So we're looking forward to that. And Ryan, if you want to come on too, I think it'd be great. So I'll send you a link if you want to come on. That would be great. So yeah. I can't come on tonight because I probably will be on for a little while. I can't come on tonight. Okay, I understand. Right, and all the others, you're always welcome to come on. But we haven't seen Nina for a while, so I thought it'd be wonderful to see her again. And I did invite her last week, and want to come through with that, you know. So, yeah. All right, Ryan, that's fine. That would be excellent. So this is Divided We Stand. It's Saturday night, the 15th of October at around 9:15. Had a few audio problems, or lack of audio problems, when we started. I don't know what happened there, but that seems to be the biggest problem, the audio. But at least we don't seem to have the problem with the upload speed, because we are now on 4 different platforms. That would be, of course, YouTube, Facebook Divided We Stand group, Facebook Divided We Stand page, and Twitter on my Twitter account. So, yeah, that's a good thing. And in the past, it's been completely impossible because I wasn't going to pay for Restream. I had bad experience with them. And now that Ecamm, does this type of thing, multi-streaming, I did have a problem with my upload speed a couple weeks ago, and thankfully that's all rectified right now. Good thing. Hope everybody is doing well, or as well as one can do in these very stressful times. I have no new news from Dave. Haven't heard from Dave in almost 5 months now. I just have nothing that I can tell you right now. I really don't know. I wish I knew more. I might have a little bit of echo here because I had loop back on. But I hope to have Dave back someday. The show must go on, however. Yeah. You have to kind of take the opinion that you have to follow things through. I mean, these are desperate times. Been watching videos of late on the environment. Of course, I'm heavily involved in the political thing, and everything's kind of coming to a head. We have the elections in November, which means about a month from now, probably less, 3 weeks from now. That doesn't look good, at least from the congressional aspect. It looks like we're going to have some problems. And now, of all things, we have a problem with Ron Johnson is the head of Mandela Barnes in Wisconsin. What the hell is going wrong in Wisconsin? I mean, you have a guy who's a lunatic. And although I didn't watch Bill Maher last night, I did watch a little piece of it. I think it was New Rules the next day. I'm very tired on Friday nights because I do the football games here locally, and I work all day, and I can't stay up past 9:30. My eyes are just so droopy and just out. That being said, Bill Maher brought up something that Dave and I used to bring up a lot, and that was that the Republicans in general have this attitude that, whoever is representing them, no matter how bad, they're willing to vote for that candidate. And that is the truth. There's no denying that. It doesn't matter whether it's Herschel Walker or or whomever you look at. It's seemingly now a fact that they hate us a lot more than we hate them. And they're basically saying that, we can't stand your woke shit, and therefore you're so bad that we're going to vote against you. And that's what Dave and I have been saying for the last basically 2 years. So Bill Maher had nothing really on us. It's just that's become the general idea of what's happening, which means we will be divided. Republicans are honest that way. Yes, Keith, they are honest that way. Let me post that so everybody can see this. And I will look at the chat as much as I can. It's the first one I've seen. So, I'm having that beach ball. I'm trying to post it, Keith. And there it goes. A little bit weird tonight, because I do have the upload speed. Republicans are honest in that way. I don't know that it's actually honesty as it is the natural response given their idea of what's happening. I do know, as Dave and I have said many times, there's a lot of bigotry and racism behind this. There's no doubt about that. It's just been acceptable to come out. We've talked about that before too. But there is some, idiocy throughout. It is a confederacy of dunces. And they actually, in many cases, do believe that there is a steal. And it's this, for want of better expression, it's the idea that, there's this Illuminati, so the name of Illuminati has changed to just something else, and that's us. And while I was walking today, I kept thinking about how they are trying to drum up this Civil War shit and why they want to do this. Because they know if things run their normal courses through American government, that, while we're in power, we will be able to handle certain things. As an example, if Biden had been president during January 6th, you wouldn't have seen that, because there would have been a response. And it really wouldn't have taken much, really. I mean, 1,000 well-armed National Guard versus 20,000 idiots, it wouldn't take much to win. But they do incite violence. They want us to do things. They'd like to see a few people on their side get knocked off so they can justify doing what they would like to do. Because that's where their advantage would be. Just chaos. Just absolute chaos. They would want that. So it's important that we hold our own in this and try to be responsible. Example, I may have mentioned this last week. I don't know. Forgive me if I repeat myself. One of my neighbors had this Halloween display. And one of the tombstones says Joe Biden. He's got one of these "Don't Tread on Me" flags. He's a Trumper. And another grave is for Adolf Hitler. And he has the birth date on it. Of all things, he has the Joe Biden one. There's no birth date and death date. But with Hitler, he's got the birth date and the death date. And then he's got the swastika. And then not only does he have the swastika on it, he's got a white background behind the swastika, so it's easy to see. So, little kids will be coming up and, what's that? And it's people like that look forward. They want to be aggressive. Just the very flag out there, it says "Don't tread on me," is a statement. I'm armed. Now, of course, when somebody has a swastika, there's only so much you can do unless there's an actual threat. It's their First Amendment right. I believe there's a guy in upstate New York who has a giant swastika on the side of his house. Can't do anything. So I said to my wife, maybe we could do something. She was thinking, well, maybe we can call the synagogue around here. We don't know, remember, and we're not religious, that. Call the state police. Because you would think something like that would be illegal, fascist symbols. But no. So I thought about things. Don't want to take the aggressive move. And of course, my neighbors wouldn't give a shit. They just, said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do like kind of the Jesus thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put not a big sign, but I have a sign on my front lawn. It says, "This home has no hate." It has it in 6 different languages. It's like a flag. So it's a subtle, no, it's not even a subtle message. It's an outright message that, we're not like that. So when those kids come and trick or treat, whether they're black, brown, Hispanic, non-Hispanic, it won't matter. They'll feel comfortable coming up in our home. The only people who will feel uncomfortable will be those people who look at something like that and say, that goddamn liberal, snowflakes, they're ruining the country. They'll hate me for that. And that's okay. And in these days and ages, you have to decide how you're going to handle that kind of situation. You do the best you can, given what's in front of you. And I know that person has the legal right to do that. As obnoxious and abhorrent as it is, you can do it. Now, I believe some of you told me to watch the Holocaust episodes from Ken Burns on PBS. I did. I believe I mentioned Cordell Hull. My father told me about Cordell Hull. I remember he was telling me about the State Department. This was many, many years ago. So none of this was new to me. But I thought what was interesting about this was that they had, at the very end of the 3rd episode, which I believe was the last episode, they alluded to the fact that that very behavior of Americans of not wanting people to come in, even in the most desperate times, is no different now. And they showed January 6th and people's attitudes toward immigrants. I mean, I can understand having immigration laws and quotas, so to speak, of how many people can come through. But there must be some process, some general process that's acceptable, where it wasn't in World War II. But what they were saying was that those very people, the Lindberghs of the world back in the 30s, aren't much different from the people today. And that is a great analogy to what I have right on my street. All right, I see that Nina is ready, so let's bring Nina on. Okay, hold on. Jeez, I've got so much stuff up here. Sorry, Nina, it's going to take me a second, but I'll be here. All right. There she is. And hopefully everybody can hear you and me. So welcome, Nina Canadian, from right outside of London, Ontario, correct?
Yes, pretty close, yeah.
Okay.
In the outskirts of London. I gotta fix the lighting, definitely.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. Okay, give you a second there. I just see here from Artificial Morphosment, I had their LBL sign. You know what? I got to check my sign because I just put it out today. I will have to either put it closer to my home or just watch it every night. That'd be really important. Welcome, Nina. Welcome. Now you're from. I mean, you'll have to refresh my memory. I'm an old man.
That's cool.
You're from just outside of London, Ontario.
Okay, and that's really cool. The point is that I have to be elusive. So I've done my job in the fact that you don't actually know.
Oh, I don't know. Okay. So you're you are in North America, correct?
Okay. Sorry, I'm born and raised in London. And so being from London my entire childhood, through until I went off to university, I lived. That London is within 2 hours of New York State or Detroit, Michigan. So, or Port Huron, Michigan borders and New York borders.
Mm-hmm.
And so the U.S. was totally part of my entire upbringing. But from there, I've lived throughout Southern Ontario as an adult. And now I've settled just outside of London, like exactly what you know, but I intentionally gave you a whole bunch of different stories so you couldn't piece it together before.
Quite fine. That's quite fine. I don't want to be imposing in any way.
Not at all. I still put it off. I'm still doing great. So that's the idea anyhow. And so where Veg is now is like where I came from, and we still have our lives cross paths because a big part of my life is still in London. I go in there for a bunch of stuff. It's our main city for all kinds of stuff.
So I guess you can confirm that it truly is not the armpit of Canada, and Veg is just joking.
I'm so glad you brought that up, and I do believe that's a slight exaggeration.
There you go, Veg.
Yeah, but I appreciate everybody's opinion, and I get it because I don't live there now. I got very upset with how they ran that city and the problems that they had. Like, they had lawsuits in the municipality, and I was like, I'm not paying taxes toward the problems that they're creating. So if I lived there, I would be disgruntled about many things. However, I have lived, through a little bit of Canada, met a lot of Canadians, and there's people who think there's an armpit of Alberta, but there's not a common consensus. I heard the armpit of Ontario is Windsor, and to me that makes sense geographically or
I've been there, by the
physiologically.
way, Windsor, a few times, so you should know.
Yeah, yeah. And so, like, so yeah, Veg is just having a lot of fun with us, and
Right.
at the expense of the city of London. And I don't blame him. I guess in the end, I've come back around, and he's having fun, and I get it. It's like,
Well, don't for
yeah,
all this, if we, I assume, Veg, you've been there, living there for quite a while. When we live in the town, I think that our opinion of that area gets tampered down a bit just because we get so used to something. And then when we're away from it, we say, oh, maybe it wasn't that bad. Although, my opinion of my old hometown, it has changed in a negative view. I used to live in a place called Cherry Hill, New Jersey for 48 years.
sounds
Very nice area. Muhammad Ali once lived there. He basically put Cherry Hill on the map. It was kind of one of these towns that was, in between Washington, New York, and Philadelphia, mob influenced. It was just an intersection point. It became popular. But it became so popular that I could not negotiate traveling in the morning because the traffic was so great. And even at night, it felt like the Indy 500 was outside my window. And there's a price you pay for popularity. And I almost felt as though, Nina, that the traffic technically was more intense there than it would be if you were traveling in Center City, Philadelphia, because it was just a geographic problem. It was the geography of how the town was set up versus how many people were in it. So, although it may have only had 75 or 80,000 people, given the geographic size of this town, it became really just too difficult for me to handle, especially when I had to travel to work. So I think that plays into how we feel about our hometowns. Yeah, I think
definitely. Oh,
this
I
is
undoubtedly, and undoubtedly, and it's part of maturing, where when you're within it, and that's what you can really the negatives can feel so negative,
mhm,
and once you get it's just such a natural evolution that you get out, things seem exciting at a point until you get homesick,
mhm,
and once that homesickness kind of builds, then and add in a crisis or two, add in mental health, and all of a sudden that brings you maturity that says that place wasn't as bad as it felt when I was there before.
right, right,
Right? I think, maybe that's the
right. Yes,
so
things change given where
grass
we
is
are in
greener,
time.
Joneses have it better. It absolutely it's that kind of feeling, but also in the terms of towns and communities, and I learned that too. I was very vocal when I left that place that Veg calls the armpit.
Right.
I think of Canada, entire country. I think is maybe where he's ranking London, but I was really angry that they were behaving poorly and incurring lawsuits at multiple levels that was then taking taxpayer money away, that was then like not put we're not investing into our community, we're fixing the mounds of garbage crap that you've left us.
Mm,
So, and then without like good accountability, with messing around this, like, yeah, and there's always factors too, like what kind of a community it is. um and I'll stop at that so I don't start trash talking my
right. I
hometown.
understand. That's
But
understand.
yeah, it's just, but I got out, and you know what, there's lawsuits in other towns too. People like yeah, the where I ended up gave them a few years, and all of a sudden they had legal problems that the city councilors caused.
Mhm.
So uh Yeah,
There's
that
no
was
escape.
my life experience of
Mm.
learning it doesn't matter.
Right. There
It's
is
crappy.
truly no escape. And I think Veg, again, this is my opinion, Veg, so you'll have to bear with me on this. Veg, in his, at least in the recent videos, basically addresses that kind of thing. I mean, there's this melancholia around us in general. So it doesn't really matter where you are. It's I don't want to say it's a storm, but it's kind of like an acid rain on us where we are just being downbeaten, and it's tough on the soul, so to speak, if I should use that type of expression. Just tough on our mentality, on how we deal with these situations. Um, but the alternative is a little more bleak, I suppose. So anyway, Nina, again, thank you for coming on tonight. I'm going to show everybody a few things here, and then we're going to discuss a few things that we see on Divided We Stand. A lot's happening on Divided We Stand. Our membership is growing, even though it is private. So if you have not joined the Divided We Stand group page, become a member. The only thing is you have to agree to the rules. We don't want to have any kind of nastiness between us, and that rarely happens. And we're slowly building our membership. We have around 1,300 people right now, and that's really great. In fact, I'll show everybody. Yeah, here. Let's look at this. This is Divided We Stand here. In fact, there's Anthony's post here. We have Anthony is one of our members, not only on Divided We Stand on Facebook, but also on YouTube. And I'll get you in here too, Nina. Here, let me throw an overlay in here. So just bear with me. And
Okay.
that way. Oy. Not me again. And there we go. Circle.
I should move
There we
my
go.
thing.
So yeah, you'll see
I'll mute.
a lot
I'll
of
mute and this, and I'll listen.
Okay. So as you can see here, we have many people who are involved in here. Again, it is private. You see here actually it was a message from Jim McHenry. I guess his video came out. I don't know if anybody here, I'm sure many of you out in the crowd watch Jim's videos. They're really good. I like them. Although today I have to say, this is where I kind of break away from what Jim would say. Jim, mentions, of course, that if you look at the two presidential candidates, whether it was Trump or whether it was Biden, they have been kind of like on the side of the fossil fuel industries. But that's where, I go into a different path. I still say, without a doubt, there is such a huge difference between Trump and Biden in terms of climate. And to try to make it seem like it's the same is doing injustice to try to fight climate change. You have to be pragmatic and make choices. And while I love Jim's videos, I cannot agree that they are kind of the same in terms of fossil fuels. They're really, I mean, you could parse a few things and say, well, Biden still allows the fracking here or this there. But Biden also, wants to have this movement toward EV, and Obama wanted to increase the miles per gallon on the cars, which was, help force the automobile industry to have more electric vehicles. So there is a big difference, and time is short, and it's not a question of just saying, what is. Yes, there's a problem, and neither candidate is perfect, but at some point, the pragmatic thing has to be done. And that is in November, you have to vote Democratic. You have to vote Democratic. There are essentially two parties here. And this is what Steve Schmidt brings up. So this I do want to discuss with you before I go into the videos today, Nina. This is a very short article, and this will just kind of play off what I said about Jim's videos and his opinion about the two candidates. So I'll kind of blow this up just a little bit, maybe a little bit more. So if you do want to read at home, it's only a few paragraphs. Steve Schmidt, a former Republican, he's very outspoken. He's part of the Lincoln Project. and you'll have to forgive me for reading this, but then, Nina, I'd like you to make a comment. Now, remember, Nina is a Canadian citizen, but like Veg, she has, in my opinion, an investment in what's happening in the United States and the political milieu in the United States. That's getting it, because it's beyond just the borders of Canada. You understand, again, the geography of the United States and Canada, where you're only 50, wherever you are. I'm not asking where, but wherever you are, you're probably within 50 or 60 miles of the United States.
Yeah, essentially between Buffalo and Detroit.
Right.
So
my point is that this is essentially, we're all in the same area. Okay. So
we really are.
Right.
We
really are.
Oh,
And the only difference is a couple
It
words.
messed up my economy many times. I'm not doubting that for sure.
Well, I'm going to read this very briefly. It shouldn't take more than a minute or two, but I think it's important, and we've talked about these things before. But let's do it, because the election is coming. It's one thing that we can do. There are 25 days remaining until Election Day. The United States has two major political parties. That's a fact. They are the first and third oldest organized political parties in the world. The Republican Party, founded in 1854, was formed to stand against human slavery and end it. Abraham Lincoln was the first Republican president. Ulysses Grant was the second. Today, the Republican Party has become the home to Donald Trump and his MAGA movement. Functionally, the party has abandoned its commitment to democracy, pluralism, and equality under law and U.S. Constitution in favor of absolute obedience to Trump and his demand for unearned political power. When Trump descended his Trump Tower escalator and declared himself a candidate for presidency, it was a lonely ride. Everybody laughed. He was called a clown and a joke by an overwhelmingly percentage of the U.S. electorate, and nearly every single elected Republican officeholder was repelled by him. Most everyone laughed at the orange-tinted reality show star as he ranted and raved and called into the morning political shows while lying in bed. The political journalists who covered Trump couldn't look away. Nobody could. CNN filled its airwaves with loyalists who would apologize and gaslight away every insane utterance he made. The experts said his ceiling was 10%, then became 20%. It was 30%. Next, it was 30%. When it was certain that he would become the GOP nominee, there were months of idiotic conversations that played out on TV that said there would be a brokered convention that he would never be the nominee. Then it was said that he could never be elected president, and then he was. So there you go.
Who are you quoting there?
Who are you quoting from? This is Steve Schmidt. Okay.
That's an article. Yeah. Okay.
And it's the warning. Okay. Vote like your life.
From when?
Pardon me?
When was that?
16 hours ago. 16 hours ago.
Okay. All right. I think he just stated the truth. Like, he recounted history. I feel like that was just recounting history, that it was horrible when Trump became president.
Yes, indeed. I think, excuse me, the music comes back on when I switch scenes. I tend to keep it off the web because we need the audio.
Is everything working? I'm not able to pull up YouTube, but perhaps that's between us.
No, everything's fine. As long as you're looking at the browser, which I invited you with, you're fine.
Yeah, okay. I've got that going on here. The other one will not pull up, but it's not.
Well, that's fine. You don't want that. It'll cause some problems with audio and all that. So there don't even worry.
Oh, I had it muted, but it's like circling and stuff.
Yeah, okay, you don't want that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna let you carry on. I apologize for jumping in, but.
Well, I'm just the point I'm trying to make about Steve Schmidt is he's very briefly but succinctly mentioned what the Republican Party was. This was a party that again, stood against slavery. It wasn't the Democratic Party; it was the Republican Party. And then,
Yeah, yeah.
at first, people didn't believe this could happen, and then he's taken over the party. It's not even the Republican Party, and this Dave mentioned many, many times. So this is why it's a danger that we have to, even though we see that there are two parties now, essentially. I mean, we don't have a Whig party now. We don't have a Communist party. I mean, there may be a few people that vote, aside from the two parties, but the third party thing isn't happening right now. So you really only have two parties, and it used to be a choice of two parties which maybe only differed, 5 or 10% on defense.
Okay.
Or 5 or 10% this way or that way. But now you have a clear and utter difference between the two parties, and one which has become essentially a fascist movement. And in an analogous way, we've talked about thermal cataclysms with climate change and the possibility of thermal cataclysm. We have a political cataclysm, a constitutional cataclysm occurring.
Yes.
And this is what I believe from reading this. This is what he's saying, and he's warning people. I keep telling you, you don't think it's possible. And it's this general ambivalence of the liberal voter, thinking that somehow either let's not vote because they both suck, or maybe the next person will vote and I'm going to go to the local Domino's and get my pizza, and I'll let the next guy do it. Because most people don't realize this. I don't know if you've heard this before, but Thomas Jefferson said this. What is the highest office in the United States? And I'm asking everybody that. And I'm not trying to make it a quiz, but it's interesting. The highest office in the United States, and that is not the president, it's not the Supreme Court, it's the citizen, it's the common citizen. We are the ones, because they are the ones who have to serve, which is like Truman said, I'm a servant.
How do they justify that?
Really? No, it is justified in the sense that
beautiful in principle, but I don't think that's achieved any longer.
It's not achieved if we don't do anything. And that's why I say it. At least I as an individual, have to take stock for what's happening, which is why I do this. This is why I'm going to vote. This is why my suggestion is to vote Democratic, because it is a duty. If we are to believe in democracy, rather than just saying, yes, I like democracy, or it's the best thing that's out there, there is a point when you have to actually be actively involved. You have to be in that moment of risk. You have to be, if you are the climate change person, you can't burn that shit. You can't do that. You can't wait for somebody else to do it and point the finger, because it's like the glass houses. So it is extremely important, in my humble opinion, that the citizen of any country, for that matter, but for the United States, and I speak as an American, that we take stock in doing what we can do. Like I said, I made a conscious decision to go out and put that sign. That's the best I can do right now, but I'm going to do it. Okay, as a vegetarian, I would like to have red meat. I would like to eat steak. I find it tasty. I do not eat it not because I want to look good in a suit. It's because I know that I'm going to cause harm. So there's a certain duty for all of us. And I think that it's something that Jefferson was correct about then and correct now. And people have to understand that the office of the presidency is not the highest office. The office of the citizen is the highest, and we have to take it seriously. And some people don't understand that, even at a subconscious level. There's no push for that person that we have inside of us to say, I want to do something. I have to do something. It's at some point, something has to be done. Otherwise, we are part of the problem. That's just what I'm saying, Nina, on that.
Okay, I really agree with that. In
I know that doesn't
in
happen. I understand it with everybody, but it must be, if we are to take our Constitution seriously, we have a role that we have to play. We have to play a role, and
Okay,
whether that means buying an EV vehicle, whether that means not
I'd
eating.
like people to acknowledge plastics. Plastics and consumerism that is at the cost of, at the expense of the earth, rather than, um, uh, you know, our economies, the American and the Canadian economies, and the Mexican economy of Mexico and the Americas has changed so significantly, because shoddy products are made in, and you don't need me ranting about this, but shoddy products are made in questionable facilities at the, under circumstances that wouldn't meet our standards of our countries, and with an incredible financial advantage, and thereby they don't have any value to people, and people do it more and more, and without, with less and less thought, and it really is, as much as we can wait to, and now I'm going off on a Nina rant, I apologize, but um, that's a day-to-day behavior. All of this is a day-to-day behavior, and elections come around every I want to say 5 months in the US. It feels like you're always electing something, but it's still, if it's 2 years, then it's so important that that is what people get and understand and work toward, but they need that to stand up for Mother Earth and stand up for people and health and safety, and um, things that are so far off the radar currently because of the way the world has evolved. Um, Sorry, I probably took you way off
No,
track
no, no.
there.
I understand. I'm just trying to make my point, and I think I can relate to what you said. You know, you were talking about Mother Earth, and I have no problem with that, because I'd like to think that I've always cared about Mother Earth. I mean, in most cases, I've tried to do the right thing, but again, as a citizen of this, you know, humongous country, which is capable of doing a lot of good things, it has to be done in a very logical way. Yes, we all have to take care of the planet. Yes, we all are responsible for our environment around us, specifically around us, how we purchase things, how we treat the environment, how we treat animals. All of that is
Yes.
extremely important. But what I am saying is there still has to be some pragmatism within the understanding that we are negotiating with different parties and different people who don't agree with what you just said, or even if they might say they agree, when it comes to actually doing something, they don't. So because the human beings are so complex and they have so many different demands, you know, there are demand machines, that we all must find a way to make the most or the greatest number of people to be a part of this, whether it's, you know, how we deal with plastics, how we deal with the problem with, you know, animals, how we deal with any major problem. It's got to be done through all of us, and it has to be easy enough that we can do this. You know, for example, composting. You know, I was watching a Shark Tank where we had there was a couple who had a product that could be composted. It was underwear that could be composted, and the entrepreneurs rightly said, you know, this is a good product because it was underwear that would decompose and you could eventually grow plants with it. But the problem is that once they buy the product, in order to compost it, they had to go through a series or stages of doing this, then this, and this, and this. And the average person won't have the tolerance. It's kind of like reading directions when you're trying to assemble something. You say, after step 3 and you can't read on, you say, fuck it, I'm going to put this piece of paper down. I'm going to look and see if this end fits this end, and I'm going to do it. It's not as if you don't want to read the directions, but if the directions aren't clear or if they become monotonous, we become human beings and say, I'm going to just use my intuition here. And sometimes it works, and sometimes when you put the grill together, the handle's upside down when you finish. So, it all goes for naught.
Or the extra parts.
Oh, the extra part. Sure. What's this thing? Oh, now I have to take it all apart again. But in all seriousness, although that does happen, in all seriousness, Nina, if I were in power, and I think that they're trying to do this, they're trying to get these charging stations everywhere, and they're being blocked at every step of the way. And this is not being mentioned enough through the environmental movement. I'm just talking about the environment in general. The environmental movement has to make some hard choices. They have to say there is a major threat to as you would say, Mother Earth, and it's coming from the Republican Party. It's coming from autocracies because they don't give a shit. Russia doesn't give a shit about anything, whether it's a human life or a dog or a cat. They don't give a shit about shit. They will shit on you. So we have to make hard decisions quickly. It's like triage. And it has to be more than just saying everybody sucks. Yeah, I know everybody sucks. Okay, yes. But there has to be some pragmatic understanding of how to go about it, and we have to make it simple enough that people can handle it. Otherwise, there's no use in complaining. Because you want perfection. It sounds good. I'm not talking about you, Nina, by the way. I'm talking about general, about the environmental movement.
Yes, or any
movement really that you're trying to do, because it doesn't matter, because there's so many good causes. I know that I can't force people to be vegetarian, but I think that, for example, Kevin Hart is doing something that's very noble, even though he's probably trying to make a lot of money, having these fast food restaurants that have vegetarian food that tastes good. So it's an alternative that people may eventually choose. Now, is it good for you? Probably not. It's probably greasy. But again, for the people who's caring about animal rights, you're not doing this for your health. If you're doing veganism or vegetarianism for your health, that means you don't really give a shit about the animal. You just want to look good in your suit. So there has to be something behind this, Nina. There has to be a pragmatic movement to say we are at critical mass, just like Steve Schmidt, just said here. The music's going to go on for a second here. But just like he said, vote like your life depends on it, because it's not just Trump. Trump is a big thing, but you will lose everything. Again, I'm talking in a polite form about everybody, not you, Nina, personally. But your life, your political life, what happens in terms of the Constitution, and it means a lot in Canada too, because we're your big neighbor, and if there's shit going down here, you're 50 miles away. You know what I mean? The shit is, you're going to smell it. So, excuse my language, but if we don't get things done, if we don't give somebody the power to get things done, whether it's EV vehicles, any kind of thing relating to important issues, if we're not pragmatic and we just simply say they're all the same, they're not. One size does not fit all. And it makes me suspect that there are ulterior motives when somebody says they're all the same. It makes me feel like, hey, this is a way I can stop some people from voting. So we are at critical mass. And I think there's a time when we have to understand. It's like knowing that, we're all going to die. It's just a question of when. And we have to grow up with it. and realize, there's oblivion facing us unless we do something, and we have to attack the problem. What say you? Agree? Disagree? That's either way is fine.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I get it. I think we explored a lot of areas there as well. So, and I think to me that exemplifies how complicated it is. It is. It's so complicated, and somehow we have to talk it out. Somehow we have to get further than where we are now, because we've been in reverse for a little bit too long. And voting is like, it's now time to talk to people about how important this vote is.
It's so important, Nina, that I'm sorry to interrupt, that the Republicans are trying to stop us from voting, and that is a key to understanding just how important what you're saying, how important voting is, because it's the only thing that we do have to equalize, and they want to take that away, as Artificial Amorphous Man said.
It's the only thing you have to help the next 2 years. It's this cycle where your society can go either direction with the, like you said, with this fascist element has taken the US so drastically down a non-developed world direction. Like this, you have receded in what's been accomplished, and I don't think there's much to compare this to. And for that reason alone, this is buying 2 years of progress or 2 years of destruction. It's too bad.
Well, we have a lot of things facing us just this year. We're still looking at what's going to happen with Russia and Ukraine, which is still an existential threat. Now, Veg brought this up, which I've actually thought about quite a bit. If you're into having an ice age, nuclear winter is your answer, and Veg kind of brought that up. I mean, he was sarcastic, but it's.
Yeah, I know.
We are always that close, because if you have somebody with an ego, and he says, "Well, I've got to come through," and he has some supporters, and he is losing the war, that he could do this thing. So here you have an intransigent leader. You have many autocratic leaders who now, it's all spreading through Eastern Europe, essentially spreading to Western Europe with Italy. So these are big problems, and you have other countries that have had a past of fascism, such as Spain during World War II. We know Brazil, that's a problem. So this is a critical point, and in a point in time. And if we don't address it here, in this sense, I will take the opinion that America must be the leader.
We're not doing justice really to humanity if we don't push, if we don't do anything. Brian, I have a question for you. Why do you have any thoughts on why fascism has bubbled up like this?
Well, I think I can come about from two standpoints. Just historically, Nina, in my opinion, a fascist can very, very easily garner support from a certain segment of the population, because there are people who are very attracted towards strong leaders in general.
Yes.
They want safety over freedom, and they want to enforce things. And in their minds, it's to their advantage to have that type of leader, because they don't like the person that's near them. Hence, this is why you had Spain in the 1930s like that. You had Italy of all
It,
countries, you would have that. You had Germany, where you had only 30% support, and then what happened? So you have that idea that there's this strong leader. There's some stability to it. There is a great fear in Russia of a free press. They believe that there will be chaos. And this goes way back to the French Revolution, a fear that, Catherine the Great was opening up Russia a bit until the French Revolution. And then she rethought this thing. And then you went in the other direction. So when you ask, fascism and why this occurs, I think it plays into the basis bigotries and prejudices of people. And there is also a function within fascism that some people can cheat the system that way too. That somehow they'll be the beneficiary of that. And the last point I want to make in this country, and I firmly believe this, and I'm not the only one, obviously, and this does relate to Russia with Ukraine, and that is that they see the demographics changing. They obviously saw, and David and I have talked about this before. You see the browning of the country. They saw that the Republican Party, as it is right now, cannot win a national election. And it's quite evident. Aside from 2004, they could not win. They still won in 2000 with fewer votes. So that's the way they were going to go. And the only way you can win the election now is to have a fascist government. And as somebody mentioned in the chat, at least from what I remember, you have gerrymandering. And that's been, at the state level, a way to enforce the will of the minority. You have a district in around Columbus, Ohio, where Jim Jordan is. Jim Jordan should not be a congressman based on where he is in Columbus. You just wrap around the black areas. Now, again, the Democrats did it too. I'm sure somebody's going to post something like that. But it has become a major, major problem within the Republican Party, so much so that there really is a cheat going on. You have a gerrymandering cheat. You have a cheat with the way the system is set up in the Senate. We've talked about that ad infinitum. So the ability for the minority to impose its will on the majority is so threatening and so great right now that they could simply change everything. Just like they changed the Supreme Court. If you don't think that's true, folks, imagine what just happened with the Supreme Court and the decisions they've made. Imagine that happening at all the state levels, and at some point you won't even have a goddamn election. Or if you do, it'll be nothing different than what happens in Russia when Putin gets 97% of the vote. And again, it plays into the demands of the minority, and it's sickening. There's a certain xenophobic type mentality. And it was always there. And I think that was why it was worth for me watching it, if not just for a couple of sentences within that Ken Burns documentary. It's the idea that you can look at what happened in the past, but the real point is those people aren't dead. I mean, yes, they're dead. All the faces you saw, from the 1930s, they're dead. But they're really not dead because they were just replaced by... What makes them different, aside from the fact that they can hold a cell phone now, whereas back then there was no cell phone. But there's still the individuals. The individual there is the same individual here. And the same thing is going on. And this time, if it wasn't the St. Louis, it's whatever. And it's a description of fear, which in itself is a form of racism. If you walk down the street and you automatically fear somebody because they're black and they're young or they're wearing a hoodie, then that in itself is racism, because you don't know that person you're walking by. They could be the nicest person in the world. I'm not saying people shouldn't be careful when anybody's walking around, but fear in itself is a form of racism. So I have a great, great, great fear of what's going to happen. I could see what Lindbergh tried to do in the 1930s being pulled off. And this time with Jewish votes, some Jewish votes, thinking that that's going to work, but it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. So I have great fears, and fascism is more the rule than the exception in the world right now, at least in the first world. I hope that answered what you were asking me. No.
Were you also going to show that Steve Schmidt
Yes,
segment
yes.
to me?
I'm going to show you that right now.
Alarming, but I feel like it still connects with some of the things that we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that really plays into exactly what you and I were just talking about. So, folks, let me entertain you. Although this entertainment's kind of anti-entertainment, right? So,
yeah.
So we'll watch this. This is going to take a few minutes. I may stop it, Nina, from time to time, so we can, if you can not get too nauseous, folks, just bear with us, and put on your football helmets. So here we go.
Of faith, I attest my allegiance first and foremost to the kingdom of God and the Great Commission. Secondly, I agree to be a watchman over our nation concerning its people and their rights for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Whereas we, the church, are God's governing body on the earth. Whereas we have been given
a new chosen one, I suppose,
legal power from heaven and now exercise our authority. Whereas we are God's ambassadors and spokespeople over the earth. Whereas through the power of God, we are the world influencers. Whereas because of our covenant with God, we are equipped and delegated by Him to destroy every attempted advance of the enemy. We make our declarations. We decree that America's executive branch of government will honor God and defend the Constitution.
See, now let's just take a break for a second with this, Nina, and discuss it. I get very worried when you bring up God, because God's not been a good thing in my mind for many, many years. It's a concept that I start saying, oh no, because
this is not allowed in my country. Doesn't make sense that anybody would bring politics and religion together. And it's tough on many parts of America to have a separation. And this is definitely what a big problem is right now. But if you go throughout the world, like a religious service is religious, and a political service is about politics, and it needs to transcend religion and biases. But this is, where is this being done, Brian? Because it reminds me of the part of church that makes me uncomfortable.
I don't actually know. I plead ignorance. I just know that this was something that was on Twitter. It was at the time live. I'm sure it was in the United States. It sounds like it was from the South, because, when somebody said, we decree that America's executive branch of government. So I would assume this wasn't in Minnesota, if you know what I mean. So but you know what? It wouldn't even matter, ladies and gentlemen, and Nina. You could see some of this shit in just about any state, maybe up into Kentucky and, sorry, Ryan, and Ohio. But This sounds more like Texas, Alabama,
Yeah,
southeastern
it does not
Florida, northern
anymore.
Florida. It
Michigan. I live in Michigan. This could be Michigan.
right.
It's
Although
hard to
Michigan,
know.
it's more like the hunters. It's like the Ted Nugents of the
Yeah,
world. They
they
want
messed
to.
everything up
Maybe we'll
now.
find out as we play along with this. Let's just
Yeah,
see.
for sure. Definitely, it is
Legislative branch, Congress, will write only laws that are righteous and constitutional. We decree that our judicial system will issue rulings that are biblical and constitutional. We declare that we stand against wokeness, the occult, and every
All right, look at this shit. I mean, there you go. Okay, yeah. The occult, like this is devil thing. We declare that we stand against wokeness, the occult, and every evil attempt. So already you've got three descriptions there. Wokeness, that means us. Occult, that means the devil. Evil, that means the devil and us. So this is, tracing back to what I said is originally is that they really don't like us. They see us as evil. And in their opinion, God is on their side and they have to stamp us out. So the very God that I learned about when I was 3 or 4 years of age was this loving thing.
right.
And then I didn't realize that these very people that brought this God up are going to make me the devil, right? And I've learned how to switch places now. I mean, if I had been somebody who actually believed in something of a greater power, I would have chosen the other guy because this God thing, when you start doing that, he seems to be pretty mean guy. He does a lot of killing and he's got a lot of people that seemingly have a license through God because, again, we make our declarations. So we are the instrument of this thing. And this is a very, very dangerous thing because they impose their will. They impose their will through divine right, which they have no right because, as again, I'm going to offend some people. There is no divine. There is no divine as far as we can know. And until that day, we can. That's as far as we can go with it. Okay. If I have a problem with my heart, I'm not going to be praying to God. I'm going to the hospital. And so, or even some of these people, because maybe they kind of really do know. But that's their decision whether they want to believe or not. But when you start using this God as a tool to kill people, to eradicate people, because they don't care about us, they'll justify killing us, just like the January 6th insurrection.
Or what about a tool to justify judgment? Because this seems so judgmental against them versus us. And it's being critical of who other people are and how they live their lives, rather than the God that we often were taught about in the moderate, I want to think the moderate religions, where God accepts everyone. And this theory of a deity is that they are, you need to behave because there's a layer of judgment, but you also know that there's forgiveness and there's such a difference between some Christian denominations that say you're born a sinner, and they use that is like at the base of their entire teaching, where this is really touching on that there's sinners versus the divine, or the righteous. And meanwhile, there are other parts of Christianity, and there's Islam, and there's Hinduism, Judaism, all of the other ideologies that still have this idea that we need to be good to one another. We need to find a way to do the right thing while we're living the life on this planet Earth. But this is so manipulating. What's happening and what's going on here with the Steve Schmidt Twitter segment, I don't, it kind of goes over my head how this all goes down. But it's a tool of manipulation. Obviously it's obvious in how the English is presented and the words and the terminology, and to me the absolute stupidity that the Republican group or the right are using this theory that wokeness is bad. Because you ask I don't know. My grandma's not alive now, but I want to say if you ask my grandma, she has no clue what wokeness means. And I guess you ask my dad, he would have no idea what wokeness means. But he has lived a woke life. He knows how to be non-judgmental and how to be inclusive and, still have the bad parts that came with where he is in society. And there's still stuff that group of people have done, where they have bad sense of humor, not knowing any better. They have crack jokes that are inappropriate today that didn't used to be. But still, there was at the core, there was an understanding that you don't do wrong to other people and they're not lesser people. What that went on in this Steve Schmidt thing is it's manipulating a lot of things that honestly I don't understand. But this allegiance, pledging an allegiance to anything is not part of my world. Taking an oath to things is not part of my world. And I am privileged to be able to just live my life and hold my politicians accountable for doing their jobs. But that's not what's going on in these.
What I see, this is, to me, this is just outright fascism. It's a terminology that it is fascism. Let's just listen to a little bit more. I'm not going to put all 4 minutes on because we have some other things to show everybody. But let's just look.
Sorry, I'm switching.
So they're going to take it back. So there's another January 6th. Oh, sorry.
Influence at the local level in our communities, we decree that we take back and permanently control positions of influence and leadership in each of the 7 mountains. We decree that the blood of Jesus covers and protects our nation. It protects and separates us from God. We declare that our nation is energy dependent. We declare that America is strong spiritually, financially, militarily, and technologically. We decree that evil carries no power, authority, or rights in our land or over our people. We decree that we will operate in unity, going beyond denominational lines in order to accomplish the purposes of God for our nation. And we decree that America shall be saved. We know this country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. We know the truth, therefore we stand for truth and will never be deceived. We will never stop fighting. We will never, ever give up or give in. We will take our country back. We will honor the one true God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. America shall be saved. Now give it praise. Do you like that?
That's pretty disgusting. That's disgusting. So, had to show that to you folks. Ignorance has no boundaries with these people. These people are dangerous given the opportunity for them to rule. We're the ones they're going to go after. I would be their main meal. It's absolutely frightening. And again, it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility as the citizens of this country, or of any country, to do something. Okay? I'm not talking about these people, like take arms and say, I'm going to do this or that. But the very least you can do is go out and vote for the person who's less dangerous. That's the kind of shit Trump's happy to see. I mean, he doesn't believe in God, but it doesn't matter. As long as these people think that he does, that's really all that matters, the perception. So this is why Schmidt's correct. This is why he posted this, because it's a warning. It's a warning. Now, again, these things have happened before. We know that. It wouldn't be unusual to see shit like this in the 1930s. But the warning is to you, and the warning is to me, and that is, you have to do something. I mean, maybe we just have to wait until, we reach 104 degrees and there's no photosynthesis. Maybe we do need the thermal cataclysm. Or maybe we do, I'm not agreeing with this, but maybe you do need to see, a second Trump term where they're just going to destroy the whole world. You'll just see that it did matter. The person you voted for did matter. It certainly mattered for Ukraine. And Nina, I guess you would agree, because you have many Ukrainians in Canada, that if Trump had been president this term, there wouldn't have been the support for Ukraine. Russia would have rolled right through, no support. It matters.
It just shouldn't have happened, though. Like, I'm very uncomfortable when you say maybe we'll go through another Trump term.
Right, I'm just saying that I wouldn't. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying
not to make that let that happen. Like
right.
that was wrong, and we need America to fix itself, please. Fix parts. And the fact that he became the president and he continued to be the president is, I don't know. People should think it makes America not so great. And,
well, it's we're dealing with a lot of crap. And I'm going to show a few more videos here. This person is a complete son of a bitch, and I don't like him at all. This is Roger Stone that you're going to see.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, he's still at it. And you see, you just think of all the people all those pardons were just such a problem. But this guy's a real danger. And this is somebody who's been right with Trump. And he's the alpha and omega when it comes to Trump. So let's bear witness to this.
Thousands of Jared Kushner has an IQ of 70. He's coming to Miami. We will eject him from Miami very quickly. He'll be leaving very quickly. He has 100 security guards. I'll have 5,000 security guards. You want to fight? Let's fight. Fuck you. Fuck you and your abortionist bitch daughter. Jared Kushner has an IQ of...
Talking about Ivanka, which is kind of funny. This is a real dangerous son of a bitch. You can see he's not intelligent. He looks like he's had his hair transplant, and he's a little bit muscular, not because of any kind of great working out. He seems like the type of guy who would be taking steroids. He's going to cheat his way. He's
Yeah.
not the real fighter. But this is the kind of schmuck that has helped ruin this country. And it says here that unreleased subpoenaed footage, Stone angry that Trump didn't grant him a second pardon, melts down after calling Ivana Trump an abortionist bitch daughter. It's always good to see some type of infighting, I suppose. But this is a horrible, horrible. This is what fascism produces. This is like he's kind of like the Zhirinovsky, who's dead, thankfully. He's the Zhirinovsky of the United States. He's a buffoon, and he should be sitting in jail. He's a dangerous, dangerous human being. And this is what happens when you say it doesn't matter. They're both the same. The candidates are both the same. They are not the goddamn same, because this is what you get. This is what ambivalence gets you. Let's look at some more hilarious shit, but really not funny. But let's watch it anyway. This is The Good Liars again. So look at this son of a bitch here.
America great. Let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. Make America great again. Let's go, Brandon.
And what does Let's Go Brandon mean?
Oh, what do you think it means? FJB. Fuck Joe Biden. Boom.
Why not just say it? Why the Let's Go Brandon? Why not just say
we're
fuck Joe
having
Biden?
fun. Just because we can say this anywhere on national television, get away with it.
Well,
And everybody knows what it means.
It means fuck Joe Biden.
It means fuck Joe Biden.
All right, so we're seeing a lot of that here. A lot of people here want to fuck Joe Biden. This guy was screaming it a bunch.
Let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon.
Had enough of that guy. And this is essentially what I have, living around me, quite frankly. Not everybody, of course, but I mean, anybody watching this show, if you live in the United States, you get this kind of crap. You get this. And Nina, to be quite frank with you, I mean, obviously Canada is a much more progressive country than a country. It's a fair country, more reasonable country. But if we get a fascist government again, and in a certain sense we have a somewhat fascist government, in that the Republicans are fascists, if they start, putting money up into Canada, they will find somebody who will be willing to, to play on people's biggest fears and bigotries. Again, I know that Canada is a much more progressive and fair country, and the likelihood of that happening would be rather remote.
Mm-hmm. No matter what happens down there, I think there's a microcosm of it that happens here. So we definitely we're stuck with that. It's unfortunate, but thank goodness our system, in my opinion, our system is set up to protect the greater population. Not everybody has the protections that they should have, but at least we have regulations where you can't mix money in politics, you can't mix religion in politics, you can't take money from people and not be accountable. Ideally, I can't say everything's perfect, but it's not the way it is. Like, the recessions hit the biggest in the US because there's not regulations to protect the consumer. That guy is such a joker. The Let's Go Brandon guy, it's like, okay, you win. You're saying a nonsense statement to try and say slander against the president of your country. It's like, okay, do you that empowers you? Because it should be a little bit embarrassing that in this world of free speech, you're kind of making up nonsense.
Well, not only that, though, I think that what he's really doing, and we know what he's trying to say, But he, again, it shows this vile hatred that, if you could measure it in some way, put some number on it, some empirical, evidence of his anger, you would see that this guy is a candidate for being, a follower of Hitler. This is what created Hitler.
Those in the size of the population, right? And yeah, sure he is, but he's one of so many. And what I have I noticed a long time ago, and now it just is the cultural norm, but America enjoys this two-party system, enjoys
Not anymore, though. Not anymore.
But the friction between one baseball team and another, one hockey team and another, the friction between this state and another state, the friction between America loves to, and they love to say USA versus the world and to cheer USA.
I hate that. It was only good for the one hockey thing, and why they had to apply that to everything. Yeah. I mean, that was fine at that moment. That was, it came from the heart. But when you start taking that, it's like you're co-opting the brand. You're just, and in a way, it makes that victory so cheap. Those rare victories where you can have something like that. It cheapened everything.
Relevance that, yes, I agree at the moment when it happened and the importance of it, but now it's cheered at Stephen Colbert, or it used to be at the old Colbert Report, I guess, but they'll cheer Colbert, they'll cheer whatever, and now it's let's go Brandon, and it's like, well, yeah, okay, American, yeah, I know you're just going to cheer about stuff but it's, and now one thing that I had noticed in the US in the past 2 decades, especially with Trump coming along, 1993, I took my first poli-sci course in university, and this topic that was really important, this section of the curriculum was about propaganda, and he really tried to get through to us what propaganda was and how it was used in the Second World War. Right. And Goebbels.
Goebbels.
And I say Goebbels, but
Goebbels. Goebbels. We know who it was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Squirrely looking guy.
Yeah. So, I was like, okay, now I understand the role of the press and the role of politics, right? Like you brought up earlier with France. Oh my gosh, great example that you brought up there. But this propaganda, I had to memorize it for my exams, but there wasn't examples of it in our everyday world. Anything that you could call propaganda was actually marketing. It was like a marketing scheme by a company or by a conglomerate or whatever. And so all of a sudden I see this social media being manipulated, and I see the words coming out of Trump and the Republican Party. I'm like, okay, that's propaganda 101. That is it. This is no, it's in every color of the rainbow and black and white. That is propaganda. It's hyperbole, and it's getting used and used, but calling it out anymore is nothing. It's just part of this culture. It's part of this point in time. I'm so discouraged that it hasn't been minimized a little bit, but it runs rampant with the ability of the almighty US dollar and the capitalist system that is manipulating the social media and the globalism and the just they can buy their way through anything. And we've got a whole new generations. We have these generations now that have only grown up knowing this stuff, so they don't know how wrong it is. It, and it's sad. You can't forecast how in the future our world is going to change for the bad. We couldn't have seen this coming, but it's a damn shit show. And it makes our world seem like the good old days.
Right. Well, you mentioned the marketing in it, because it does have elements of marketing in it when you're talking about propaganda. I mean, Goebbels would have been fascinated or proud at what's going on in Russia because their propaganda is actually more effective because there is no rival in Russia. There's no freedom of speech there. You don't have a free press, so you have 24/7 the push of Russia. The
sheltering as well in China and in Russia, and cutting off the global free press. Like this, we don't have the free press that the world once was thriving on.
Well, we still, to a certain degree, have it in the United States. The problem is that there are elements, specifically from the Republican Party, that has taken the idea of free speech and a free press and made it a fascist arm of a Republican government. So under the guise of being free press, it isn't a free press.
Marketing and branding, but it really is propaganda. It's manipulative.
Absolutely. You look at Fox News, OAN. I mean, I think all press, if you're trying to make a dollar, you're trying to get viewers, but there are certain, for example, certain shows that I would watch, like Chris Hayes. I have no problem with Chris Hayes. He makes sense. He has the right guests on, and he doesn't talk shit. He's not a two-shitter. He's not trying to one-up anybody. His show does well enough that he doesn't need to have Corporation X or Corporation Y. Now, it's true that MSNBC makes money because it caters to the liberal viewer. And that's fine with me. My issue is make sure what you are delivering is good quality information. And I feel that I'm getting that in most cases with them. Whereas if you look at OAN, Newsmax, Fox News, there is no aspect of it which is actually news. What you have is a continual onslaught of it, what you say, manipulation, using marketing methods, looking at specific demographics. And in fact, it matters in terms of the election because they're looking to see, what type of ad can put out in one specific area to get that voter, essentially in the areas where there's contention, who's going to win. So you have so many things working against you. Again, luckily we still have a free press. It is abused in certain cases, but thankfully right now we do have a free press. But this is what Trump and the Republicans are eventually going to try to stop. This is what Putin did stop. This is why since 2004, well over 71 journalists have been killed. And if you're going to do any type of journalism like RAIN, the telecanal RAIN, you have to do it from Latvia or Lithuania, wherever they're doing it from, because there's just no way you can decide it. And then you look at Khashoggi in Saudi Arabia, you essentially had interrogation by chainsaw. So without that free press, and I don't have to tell anybody this, you're going to lose it all, because if it wasn't for the press, yes, the Democratic candidates can only do so much, but it's the press that can really put pressure on these people. These people do not. You see, I'm in the belief that, and not in terms of a soul like we know, but if you are and when I say this in quotes because I am an atheist. But if you have a clean mentality or a clean soul, so to speak, that's the way you're going to get things done for the better of the planet, as you mentioned. When you don't have a clean mentality, your hands aren't clean. There's mud involved. It always leads to something bad. You first have to have a clean soul. And again, I don't want to have any religious connotation with that. It's just my choice of words.
I like that, Bill. That makes sense.
Now, I'm going to show us our last video here, and this is Steve Scalise. Now, he was shot in that practice baseball team, and he's lucky that, he was saved by the police, liberal policemen and women, And you would think a guy like that would have had disdain for what happened on January 6th. And he was the one who he was leading the accusations that Nancy Pelosi could have done something. Well, let's take a look at this. This was again from MSNBC. This is from Morning Joe, but it made a very, very good point. And, there are people out there who don't like Nancy Pelosi, which I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that she's a strong woman. Okay. And the people don't like that, whether they're liberal or whether they're conservative in many cases. I think it's sexism. But let's check this out because she did try. And Scalise, the liar, he was right there when this was happening. He knew exactly what was happening. And yet he still made accusations that she did nothing when he, in fact, did nothing. All right, this may take a little bit of time, but we'll get to it. I may have to skip around. Just hang in there with me.
Got a look at never-before-seen video of congressional leaders sheltered in a secure location during the insurrection, begging the administration for help.
We have got to finish the proceedings, or else it will have a complete victory.
There you go. There's your USA.
At a secure location, and they're locked down in the Senate.
There has to be some way we can maintain the sense that people have that there's some security or some confidence that government can function and that we can elect the President of the United States. Did we go back into session?
We did go back into session, but now apparently everybody on the floor is putting on tear gas masks to prepare for a breach. Well, I'm trying to get more information.
They're putting on their
tear gas masks.
So this is obviously the beginning when she first learns what's going on. Let's move it ahead a little bit.
Personnel now. Can you get the Maryland National Guard to come too?
Schumer's doing something.
I have something to say, Mr. Secretary. Well, I'm going to call the mayor of Washington, D.C. right now and see what other outreach she has to other... Hi, Governor. This is Nancy. Governor, I don't know if you have been approached about the Virginia National Guard. Mr. Hoyer was speaking to... If you don't mind, I'd like to say...
So she did something.
Of the national safety it just transcends everything. But the fact is, on any given day, they're breaking the law.
This cannot be just we're waiting for so-and-so. We need them there.
Sorry about the ad.
Discover Online Privacy Protection.
There now, whoever you got.
You also have troops. This is Steny Hoyer. Troops.
Okay, so we have a little bit of time to make that decision.
Andrews Air Force Base.
All right.
Other military bases.
Thank you.
I don't want to speak.
All right, there. Now let's take a peek there, if you don't mind. You see Steve Scalise on the left. He was there when all this was happening. And yet he had the chutzpah to say that Nancy Pelosi did nothing. He's the one that's got goddamn hands in his pocket. And he knows better. He was attacked. He's lucky he's alive. And I don't endorse what that person did. But this guy knows better. That guy knows better. And he's going to lie. And again, this goes back to this thing that I said last week about the Republicans are now in a trap. Because in the past, they were capable of doing this kind of thing, but they didn't do it. Because there was some type of decency, or they knew that there would be some repercussions. But now that we have Trump, now that we have this mentality, this fascist mentality, they're afraid of their own constituents, and they're willing to go all the way. They're willing to lie. And again, it goes back to that idea, Nina, that what they hate in us justifies the endorsement of lying, the endorsement of doing anything to ensure that they'll win an election, and an endorsement of Donald Trump and his mentality. This is what has happened. We are at a nexus. Nexus? Well, we're at a crossing point. Okay. And
I agree. Okay.
And something again has to be done. And to simply say, they all suck. I don't even say all corporations do this. I mean, look, we have people like George Soros, who's a liberal. He actually cares. There's some who do care. Then you have Elon Musk, who's ready to stab the Ukrainians in the back simply because, he's shelling out a few $1 million a month, and he wants $100 million from the government. He's the richest man in the world, and he's pissed that the Starlink that he's using to help the Ukrainians is it's costing him too much money. His bottom line. Now those are assholes. Yeah. Not everybody, thankfully, is like that. Hence, back to the beginning when you first came on. We're at a crucial point. We're 3 weeks away from an election. And if tonight we can only get one person to come out and vote who wouldn't have voted, you did something. But again, if we bitch and moan and say, oh, everybody sucks. You know who sucks? Not you, Nina. The person who says that sucks. If you say that, you suck. You really suck. Because you can't lift a finger. You see the trash on the fucking ground. Not you, Nina, remember. You see the fucking trash on the ground, and you're going to complain about shit, and you don't want to pick it up because you didn't do it. You want to wait till the right guy who threw that comes and picks it up. And they should, but it's not going to happen.
Right.
Sooner or later, you got to put the hand over the wound and stop the bleeding. Because you know better than the next person when you do that. You ignore what you defend. Gino Vanelli said that in one of his songs. He's a good Canadian. So I stole his line.
Gino Vanelli.
Yeah, it was from the Gist of Gemini. He was talking about going to the war. And he said, what would happen if I came back a post-war eunuch? Would you still love me? That kind of thing. And in one of the lines, he said, what would you ignore what you defend, or something like that? But it was in there. If you go look at it, not that I'm turning this into a musical discussion. Gino Vanelli figured that out, so I'm using that line.
Now, if I can just add on to this comment, you made it twice, and I really agree. And I'd like to encourage everyone that the election's coming up, and if we can vote in advance, go ahead and vote in advance, because that makes sure that it's taken care of, and it's not putting the fate of this into one day. But alternatively, what we could do is give a lift to somebody who needs to vote and couldn't get there. That's really the way the attitude I've had for a few years is, if I can make it easier for someone else to vote as well, then maybe that's a purpose that I can serve.
Right. A few people have mentioned Edward Bernays. I guess he was a nephew of Sigmund Freud, I believe. Yeah, and he had the Victory cigarettes or something like that. Yeah, very, very. And he took just the simplest of psychological methods to try to change the behavior of smokers, and he put money in the tobacco industry. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I guess what we've looked at, folks, is that the manipulation of the public may be a lot easier than one would think. And again, for those of you who are religious, I'm not trying to point a finger at you, but I think the original manipulation is the use of this supreme power, and it's
and
it creates
if people
fear.
are getting the constant message of things will magically be changed by something that we can't see, all those people are invited to keep coming back for a dose of our reality. If they ever want to get the alternative message, I think that's what we try to really flourish, is that it's human behavior that's going to change things. It's knowledge, it's information, and behavior. And if you're in that world where this is what you know because it's what you've always known, or it's giving you that sense of security, hopefully coming and meeting with people through this kind of network, we give you some of this thought of what it's like to be planted on the ground without the expectation that our power is outside of us.
Mm-hmm.
There we are.
We're getting a lot of good commentary within the group, and obviously I can't put all of these up, and I thank everybody. And it's good that they have their conversation within the group there, because it's makes what we want, and that is interactive. Although I may not be able to address it myself, it doesn't matter as long as it's being addressed and talked about within the DWS community. That's fine with me. Ooh, Pompeo, that's another name. Kinky Street. That's that's another guy that makes me want to sick. Epi, thank you for showing up tonight. I know it's 10:58. 5 hours later, it's like 4 o'clock now there, or something like that. Oof. 6 GOP senators. Yes?
Yeah, he runs on little sleep. He's a music savant. If you get to know Epi, he is a really fantastic fella, and he'll keep you up all night if you end up giving him some time to chat.
Well, it's wonderful to see his name every week, and
every week.
I always tell my wife, I said, I get people from around the world, and some from Scotland watches. This is just, and Scotland, as much as I've never been to Scotland. I've had 3 Scottish Terriers, and I love them all very much, and they're proud. They're people to me, the Scottish Terriers, so they can do no wrong. So, in any case, yeah, I know we're running up against the clock here, Nina. So I do want to first of all thank you again for coming on tonight. I can't thank you enough, and I really appreciate that. We've been through, a rough 5 months here without Dave. The flow of the show has been different, but it has gone on, and Dave would want us to do it. And I'm speaking so Dave's not here. He's here, but he's not here. Until he gets better, we're going to keep rolling, and it's nice to see people, on the show, and and the invitation is open to all of you. Maybe we'll have Ryan. Ryan was originally on our show in the very beginning, so it'll be great to see Ryan. I think Ryan mentioned he's not here right now; he had to leave, but Ryan's a brilliant guy, and he's a big chess aficionado, and he's from Kentucky, so he keeps us up to date with that. And so again, Nina, thank you. It was wonderful speaking with you and getting your input. And it's great to have our Canadian input because it's just phenomenal that we have so many people, relatively so many people, in our group who are from Canada, which show that they care. I mean, you all care because in a way, you do get the big picture. You could simply, they live 50 miles away. I'm not going to worry about them. I don't live in the United States, but you get it. You get it, and you know that it's important. And that's why Veg has been, a big part of this channel because we need to have him on because he knows the importance of things getting right, down under here. We have to get this thing right because Canada can't, the whole world, the free world cannot exist as we know it unless the United States gets his shit together. And that's not coming from an egotistical standpoint, that's just the reality of a country that has the strongest military and fights for freedom, so to speak. Unless it works here, the house of cards falls. And that you could apply to climate change or freedom of the press or anything. Because unless there's this great migration of talent from the United States to Canada, well, all of a sudden Canada will have a 300 million population in a matter of 2 weeks when we all leave and come to Canada. We might have to do that, or we may have to, like we had the French help us out. We'll have to have the Canadians help us out. We liberals will need the help, So in any case, I am going to sign off. I'm sorry the introduction didn't have any volume. I am really worried about that. I don't know why that didn't happen. I'll figure that out. But luckily for the rest of the show, it did work and everybody could hear. So again, Nina, thank you. We were on 4 platforms. So again, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so. It helps. Please like and share, or dislike and share, whatever you feel. Please look at my Twitter account. That's just my name. And again, we have a Facebook page and a Facebook group page. So if you feel the necessity, please become a member. We have some strength in numbers. So again, good night, Nina. Thank you. And we'll see you
Good night,
next time.
everybody.
Okay, bye-bye, everybody. Have a wonderful week. At least try to. Election's coming soon. Let's win it rather than lose it. See ya.